A blonde woman eating a strawberry freezes when asked if she's thinking of leaving. A dark-haired man with green eyes suggests that a post-meal walk is healthy. With a sharp tap, she sets down her fork, declaring herself a sinner undeserving of such a fine meal. Flustered, the blonde woman insists that she needs time for self-reflection. The dark-haired man wonders aloud if it's really been 2 weeks of this. The blonde woman's excuse for her reflection is that the weather is simply too hot to go outside. Lying in a bed of roses, the woman reads as an unseen voice questions if her reflection is for disrespecting comic books. She looks weary, questioning the method of their reflection, and is pointedly asked if she truly doesn't know why. She passionately declares that this is the best place for her, and that she never wanted to go out anyway. The dark-haired man listens silently as the blonde woman realizes she can't actually say that to him. She deviously explains her punishment is for crushing a precious comic book he had prepared for her. The dark-haired man smirks, questioning her story before falling silent. He muses that others might see him as harsh, while she nervously insists it's all a misunderstanding. The blonde woman sheds tears of performative joy. She erupts in anger, demanding to know why he's kicking her out after telling her to stay inside. A slice of strawberry shortcake is placed on a plate with a soft click. The blonde woman snatches the cake, announcing her retreat as the Solt family's sinner. Declaring she's been suffocating with guilt, she announces she is leaving. She bids a cheerful goodbye, disappearing with her prize. The dark-haired man reaches for the closing doors, his word trailing off. The blonde woman falls back with joyful abandon. Landing softly on her bed, she sighs in contentment, declaring it the best place to be. Clutching her cake, she silently pleads that no one comes to take it from her. Safely in her room, she begins to happily eat her cake. She smiles, rationalizing that lying in bed will minimize calorie consumption and prevent dizziness. A helpful note explains the benefits of high-calorie foods for quick energy. The scene showcases a perfect room for a homebody, complete with sweets and a cozy bed. The blonde woman snuggles into her blankets, perfectly content. The mood darkens as the narration reveals she has possessed a character in a novel titled Forced Empress. The novel's main character, Lamea Solt, is introduced as a beautiful treasure of the kingdom who was courted by a crown prince. The story's tragic heroine was ultimately kidnapped and confined like a bird in a cage. The narration clarifies that the main character possessed was not the beautiful Lamea, but her overworked, pink-haired subordinate. The pink-haired woman begs for a piece of bread, vowing to work all night as the blonde woman's possessed form clings to her dress. An unseen person throws papers in her face, angrily demanding why she's talking back. The pink-haired woman scolds the younger-looking blonde girl, who cries while surrounded by papers. For 3 months, she was worked like a slave in a terrible environment. Now, in a maid's uniform, she sighs over another night of overtime while working diligently. She continues her work alone in the dimly lit room. Suddenly, a black-gloved hand clamps over her mouth, muffling her shocked gasp. A man with brown hair restrains her, mistaking her for Princess Lamea and ordering his men to knock her out for transport. As she struggles, she panics internally, screaming that she isn't Princess Lamea. After dying from overwork, she possessed a character who also overworks, only to now be kidnapped. With a sack pulled over her head, she glares with furious determination. Ack! Unmasked and bound, she desperately yells that she's not Lamea Solt. Kneeling before a shadowy figure, she frantically explains she is just a maid, a slave. She realizes she couldn't correct the kidnapper's mistake because he had sealed her mouth. She begs for her life, pleading her ignorance to her captors. The dark-haired man from the beginning appears, looking down with a confused expression. She blushes, noting how handsome he is, but then recalls the male lead in the novel is supposed to be blonde. The flustered kidnapper explains he brought her for impersonating Princess Lamea's seal, while the blonde girl wonders if he's the villain. The dark-haired man suspects she's lying to hide her identity, finding the situation sudden. She tearfully insists it's not a lie, explaining she had to follow the princess's orders to be fed and allowed to sleep. Crying, she pleads that simply following a master's orders as a slave isn't a crime. The dark-haired man and a man with glasses observe her impassively, the latter looking somewhat confused. The man with glasses whispers something to his dark-haired companion. The dark-haired man's green eye narrows as he silently considers her plea. With a faint smirk, he announces that he'll verify her story. He orders her to be locked away, warning her to stay quiet if she values her life. A guard leads the way through a brightly lit doorway. The blonde girl blushes with relief, realizing she has successfully avoided the death flag for now. She marvels at her new prison, where she can sleep for more than 4 hours and have meals brought to her room. A flashback reveals that all of Princess Lemea's famed achievements were secretly her work, as the pink-haired princess was talentless. In another memory, an unseen person throws papers at her, condemning her as an illegitimate child and sentencing her to a life of servitude. She recalls dying from overwork in her past life, lamenting that she's facing the same fate again. Clutching a stack of documents, she muses that when you possess a novel, your life is supposed to change. Though her new life isn't a romance, she accepts it, noting her proficiency at work as she prepares for a difficult year ahead. Using her knowledge of the original story, she works with confident efficiency. The pink-haired Princess Lemea angrily throws documents, demanding to know why the import amount was increased without a proper explanation. The blonde girl sighs, thinking to herself that she already explained it was to prepare for the coming bad year. Princess Lemea erupts in a rage, screaming that she couldn't possibly know that. The blonde girl despairs, wondering why foolish bosses in both her lives always take their anger out on her. Her captor presents a document confirming her identity as Princess Lemea's slave, and she trembles, realizing she's been caught. Kneeling, she confirms her identity, but then panics, thinking he'd never believed the extent of her servitude, and laughs nervously. The man contemplates her story from his desk before rising and walking toward her. As he approaches, she looks up at him with wide, tearful eyes. The dark-haired man smiles, challenging her to make him believe her story. Stunned by his challenge, she remains silent and wide-eyed. The man recounts how Princess Lemea has been deftly countering the Cleton Empire's plans, causing the blonde girl to break into a cold sweat. He admits that she had been getting on his nerves. He suddenly presents a document to the blonde girl, who stares at it in shock. Recognizing a trade certificate from the Salt Kingdom, she wonders how the Grand Duke could possess such a thing. She instinctively reaches for the shocking document. Examining the document's seal, she realizes its purpose is to prepare for the Cleton Empire's impending export halt. She internally curses Lemea's foolishness, knowing this deal will cause the people of the Salt Kingdom to suffer greatly. Her anger grows as she realizes the Empire is wastefully buying back its own surplus wheat at a premium. She looks up in shock, and he coolly asks if there's a problem. She declares the document is a scam, prompting the Grand Duke to ask for her reasoning. Pointing to the wax seal, she explains it's from an unaccredited merchant group, not one officially used in trade with the Empire. She confidently concludes that it's a trade scam designed to intercept goods or commissions. The man with glasses whispers to the Grand Duke that their spy reported Lemea's indifference, suggesting the girl's story might be true. With a sinister smile, the Grand Duke realizes that the mastermind thwarting him wasn't Lemea, but the girl before him. He leans in close, gripping her chin and demanding to know how she uncovered the Empire's scheme. He presses her, asking if she managed to plant a spy under his nose, leaving her stammering. Panicked, she thinks about how her knowledge comes from reading the original novel, where all the Empire's plans were detailed. As he pinches her cheeks, she internally insists she only wanted to protect innocent citizens without altering the main plot. She grabs his hand, desperately claiming she doesn't know anything. With tears welling in her eyes, she begs to be let go, saying her only crime was working as hard as she was told. The dark-haired man misinterprets her pleas as patriotism, while she desperately begs him to spare her life. He leans in, coldly asking if she knows how the Empire deals with liars and criminals. Casually inspecting a knife, he explains that their methods begin with cruel torture if the truth isn't confessed. With a sinister grin, he threatens to tear her mouth open, as she internally panics that he'd never believe she's a transmigrated office worker. She despairs, realizing her new life has hit rock bottom, and she faces either torture or death. Suddenly, she leaps up and declares she has one thing to say. Catching him off guard, she proudly states that she's a person who always puts her all into her work, leaving him to listen silently. In a dramatic flourish, she grabs a microphone and passionately promises to grind her bones in his service for life if he spares her. Her impassioned presentation at a podium is met with an unimpressed stare from the Grand Duke. Unmoved, the Grand Duke orders a masked guard to take her away, much to her shock. The man with glasses leans in, informing her of the price for lying to His Grace, the Grand Duke. He finishes with a sinister smile, stating the price will be paid in a harsh environment as she recoils in terror. No! She wails, certain that harsh environment can only mean the torture chamber. The narration confirms her fears were realized, as she was thrown into a dark, underground prison filled with torture devices. But to her surprise, she finds herself in a pleasant room with food, delighting that the blackout curtains are even better than she hoped for. She happily flops onto the bed, deciding the cramped space doesn't matter, since she'll be lying down anyway. Cuddling a fluffy pillow, she declares this cozy confinement the ultimate luxury for a homebody. She stretches out blissfully, ready to enjoy her imprisonment without being bothered by anyone. Elsewhere, an armored figure walks away in frustration, cursing loudly. The pink-haired Princess Lamea slumps over a mountain of paperwork, complaining that her head is pounding and she can't focus. In a painful memory, she recalls her father's disappointment and her grief over her brother's deaths. Her father instructs her to fulfill her duties and work, reassuring the public after the Empire's kidnapping attempt. He tells Lamea that learning from April's side should have been sufficient preparation, but she looks down in silence. Bam! She slams her fist down, screaming that she isn't smart and can never be like that girl. Seething with resentment, Lamea blames everything on April for being so careless as to get kidnapped. Seeking a distraction, she decides to read a letter from her beloved Raiden to help her focus. The letter's praise, calling her the wisest and most beautiful on the continent, brings a happy blush to her face. Though she struggles even to read, she hopes the kind Raiden will understand her shortcomings. Back in the present, the Grand Duke asks an aide if the prisoner's behavior has changed. The man with glasses reports that she shows no resistance, finding it strange for a supposed noble royal who was the hidden power behind Lamea. He notes her dreadful enjoyment of imprisonment, but assures the Grand Duke she won't last long. The Grand Duke thoughtfully suggests they report the kidnapping as a failure but a success in uncovering the truth. A profile of the captured girl, Princess April, details her royal bloodline, beauty, and connection to Crown Prince Raiden's obsession with Lamea. The text suggests that Raiden's obsession was with Lamea's supposed talent, which might change things if April's story is true. Realizing the woman who truly fits the prince's taste might be April, the Grand Duke orders the kidnapping reported as a failure for now. He then commands his aide to omit any mention of Princess April in the report, surprising the man. The man with glasses explains that the Crown Prince has no need to know about her. The Grand Duke walks to a window, peering outside. A faint, knowing smile plays on his lips as he gazes out the window. A recruitment notice for the scanlation team is displayed. A hand holds a pen as the person wonders what is happening. The blonde girl sits at a desk in a modern-looking office, wide-eyed with confusion, as she asks herself why she's working. Wah! She imagines a life of rest and desserts, lamenting that her comfy, kidnapped life might have been just a dream. A sinister voice mocks her, saying an extra like her can't expect reincarnation to fix a pathetic life. An unseen force grabs her as a menacing eye tells her not to worry. The voice declares her destiny is to work herself to death in this life too. The pink-haired woman from her dream smiles cruelly, vowing she'll be trapped and buried under paperwork and die all over again. Gasp. The blonde girl jolts awake from the nightmare. Clutching her chest in relief, she pants, realizing it was all a dream. Lying in her real-world bed, she closes a book, sighing that she gets what she deserves for reading random books with such awful endings. Her hand taps a book as she wishes for a comic. The blonde-haired woman smirks with a sly expression. The man with glasses suspects her of plotting an escape, while she wonders why he keeps visiting. He frantically denies being tempted, swearing loyalty to the Duke, while she wonders if she should laugh. She asks the Duke about his offer, learning he thinks she's satisfied with her stay. His aide confirms the Duke's words with a smug, money-grubbing gesture, leaving her confused. Annoyed, she asks what price he's referring to, as being kidnapped isn't a paid experience. Whump! A stack of documents is suddenly dropped in front of her. The aide presents the overdue dam construction documents. He tasks her with reviewing the delay and finding a solution. Stunned, she asks why her, thinking it's too important a task for a captive. She recalls a desperate plea to work for free for life if they'd just let her live. Her aide gestures to her past declaration, asking if she has anything else to say. She doesn't. With a glint in his monocle, he tells her to imagine the consequences. She sighs, realizing she's become a kidnapped worker in another world. His aide speculates she might devise a genius solution, but the Duke asks what happens if she fails. The Duke declares that if she lied, she'll pay the price. Knock, knock. A visitor arrives in the Duke's office. Surprised by her quick response, the aide assumes it's a letter of surrender. He scoffs at other possibilities before realizing the letter is a request to be forwarded, leaving him baffled. A week later at the dam site, conscripted workers complain about the heat and long for home. A worker wishes for help, then spots a group of people approaching in the distance. The aide arrives with mercenaries, announcing they are the Black Eagles, here to help with the dam. He announces the Duke's order for the workers to return home, leaving them overjoyed. The workers celebrate wildly, cheering for the Grand Duke and their freedom. April explains her plan to hire struggling widows and single mothers as replacement kitchen staff. This solution, she notes, also fulfills the meals provided clause in the mercenaries' contract. She smiles, proud of her successful and elegant solution. The aide asks in disbelief how she managed such an impossible feat. He demands to know how she hired mercenaries who only worked for the Kingdom of Salt. She credits the Duke, leaving him and his aide completely baffled. She explains that with their pay cut by their former employer, the mercenaries were desperate for work. Revealing she wrote to a master negotiator, she says she made an offer that couldn't be refused. She explains she used the Duke's seal to guarantee a perfect contract, but he questions her confidence. She smiles knowingly, remembering how she was so certain. A flashback reveals her torturous process of exchanging hundreds of letters to understand her counterpart. Having met the 2-week deadline, she stands before a stunned and speechless aide. Beaming, she happily asks if she can finally return to her room. The aide admits he's impressed by her experienced solution to employ low-income residents. Reporting to the Duke, the aide confesses he learned from her smooth handover. The Duke wonders why someone so capable hasn't tried to escape. The aide speculates that perhaps she wants something from the estate. The Duke considers this, suspecting she might be after information. A sly smile plays on the Duke's lips as he relaxes. He muses that perhaps she wants a tour of the mansion. April, however, is confused by the idea, wondering why she would need a tour. She asks if she can request something else instead, and he agrees to hear it. Seizing her chance, she prepares to make her true request. She shocks the Duke by shouting that she wants a room filled with comic books. With a cheerful smile, she explains that she's been dying to read comics again. He asks what comics are, and she realizes with a jolt that she's in a novel world. The Grand Duke calmly asks, "Princess?" as she panics, realizing comics don't exist here. She wonders how to convince the Grand Duke, who thoughtfully muses over the word comics. Her spirits lift as she excitedly wonders if she can upgrade her shut-in lifestyle. A promotional notice for the scanlation team is displayed. A man with dark hair tied in a ponytail smiles warmly while greeting others. Standing beside the man with glasses, the light brown-haired girl nervously asks who the assembled people are. The man with glasses introduces the former royal painter Lord Brown and his apprentices Lord Cedric and Lord Robid. He explains they are here to produce a comic book, much to the girl's horror. The Grand Duke confirms that he has gathered the Empire's finest artists for the task. She internally despairs, realizing he assembled an elite team just to make a comic book for her alone. The Grand Duke gently lifts her chin, asking if there's something more she wants. He smiles invitingly, telling her to speak freely, but she nervously insists she's fine. He clarifies that she needs to explain the comic book production, stunning her into silence. Lord Brown presents a hyper-realistic painting of apples, but she rejects it, calling it a masterpiece, not a comic. She nervously suggests he ease up on the detail, as Lord Brown thoughtfully considers her feedback. Two of the artists argue, with one calling a style copied and the other insisting it has evolved. She tries to clarify that a rough outline is fine, as conveying the story is what truly matters. The three artists are suddenly struck with inspiration, hailing it as a new form of art pioneered by House Blair. She forces a laugh, internally screaming that they've completely misunderstood her point. Lord Brown presents a finished book, announcing it's a comic detailing the achievements of the first Duke Blair. The first page of the comic depicts the outlandish story of Duke Blair being born from an egg to slay monsters. As she reads, she dismisses the work as nothing more than an exaggerated, heroic biography. Lord Brown eagerly asks for her thoughts, reminding her that the Grand Duke wants her to give the final evaluation. Turning away, she reluctantly admits that the quality is high and the story development is impressive. The other two artists passionately declare they poured their hearts into depicting a main character with overwhelming power. She despairs, wondering if asking for a comic was a terrible crime and if this is all a plot to silence her. She stands to address the artists, who ask what she means by her sudden interruption. When she asks if they found the Chronicle of the First Duke entertaining, the three artists fall silent. The artists agree that art should focus on honoring achievements, deeming art for pure amusement to be lowbrow. She thoughtfully considers their perspective on wasting esteemed artists' labor on mere entertainment. Pointing a finger, she cheerfully argues that the true essence of art is enjoyment and bringing happiness to others. The artists stare back in silence, causing her to panic internally, wondering if she said something ridiculous. Her words move Lord Brown to tears. He recalls his younger self, realizing he had forgotten art's true purpose in his quest for personal glory. The other artists agree she has given them new insight and eagerly ask what she would have them do. Holding the book, she smiles and confidently offers to provide them with an interesting story. She flips open the book and asks who is responsible for the sketches on a specific page. A timid, dark-haired apprentice named Ashley introduces herself as the one who was summoned. The girl greets Miss Ashley with a warm smile, confirming she was the artist behind the sketches. Ashley nervously admits she has never completed a full piece and only managed to help with the rough sketches. She suddenly panics, standing and asking if there was something wrong with the parts she worked on. Distraught, Ashley confesses that everyone called her sketches bizarre and blamed her for any potential failure. As Ashley tearfully apologizes, the girl cuts her off, firmly stating, "That's not true." She passionately declares that the only truly outstanding part of the entire comic book was Ashley's sketches, as she takes the stunned apprentice's hands in her own. Highlighting the page, she explains that, despite the dull story, Ashley's excellent paneling and pacing made it feel like a real comic. Her eyes shining with purpose, she tells Ashley she wants to entrust her with the most important role in creating a comic book. Ashley now stands alone in a long, sunlit hallway, contemplating the offer. A smiling man approaches Ashley, asking if the lady summoned her. He questions Ashley about her meeting, asking if she was told to drop the project. Ashley reveals she was asked to handle the direction, surprising the two men with her. PFT. One of the men laughs mockingly, exclaiming that she's been found out as a pathetic apprentice. He cruelly tells her that direction just means she'll never be allowed to do real drawings. Putting an arm around the other man, he assigns the main art to Barrymore, praising his skill. He continues his praise, contrasting Barrymore with someone who is dead last forever, as Ashley stands dejected. The man smirks, warning Ashley that without patronage, she'll be starving on the streets soon. As they walk away, he sarcastically wishes her well, suggesting a tiny future exhibition in a backwater village. A memory of hands clasping together in solidarity flashes through her mind. In the memory, April's voice declares her belief in Ashley's potential, a talent Ashley herself never recognized. Recalling April's encouragement, Ashley's expression hardens with newfound resolve. Sometime later, April sits before the Grand Duke, nervously asking why she was summoned. The Grand Duke notes her work on the comic book project and asks if she needs anything else. Flustered by his directness, April blushes and stammers, trying to think of a response. She brightly requests an extra snack or two, suggesting something sweet or salty would be nice. The Grand Duke appears momentarily surprised by her simple and mundane request. His gaze intensifies as he questions if a comic and snacks are all she wants, making her panic internally. Overwhelmed, April wonders if she did something wrong, realizing she can't just ask to be left alone. The Grand Duke calmly states that he has something he wants to give to the princess. Her eyes widen in surprise at his unexpected declaration. A recruitment notice for the scanlation team is displayed. The Grand Duke repeats his statement, telling her he has something to give her. April remains startled by his words, her expression frozen in surprise. A cheerful red-haired maid greets her, calling her young lady. Confused, April asks who the maid is, and the maid introduces herself as Bonita, her new attendant. Bonita chatters energetically, complimenting April's eyes and displaying the energy of a complete extrovert. April screams internally, horrified that the Grand Duke's gift was a person, feeling overwhelmed by Bonita's energy. The Grand Duke smiles knowingly, instructing April to tell Bonita if she needs anything. Annoyed that her request for a snack resulted in a person, April grits her teeth and offers a reluctant thank you. While walking, Bonita happily shares that the staff is glad to learn their new guest is so kind. Bonita mentions a jealous rival maid named Marina, whom April has never heard of. As Bonita explains, April is known as the suspicious young lady. April realizes the Grand Duke's true intention is to annoy her. April deduces that Bonita is only pretending to be an attendant and is actually on a mission to watch her. A close-up of April's eyes reveals her understanding of the situation as she thinks, "I see." Bonita enthusiastically asks what they'll be doing and how she can help. April forces a smile, replying that it's good timing as she had something on her mind. Clenching her fists, Bonita eagerly encourages her to speak. In the artist workshop, Ashley nervously announces that she's been assigned as the director. She timidly presents a storyboard she created based on the story. The two male artists sit together, whispering and eyeing her work with skepticism. Barrymore scoffs at the storyboard, complaining that a panel is just a background, causing Ashley to flinch. The artists confront Ashley, accusing her of using backgrounds to hide her poor character art and criticizing her perspective. They dismiss her authority, insisting that Barrymore, the senior apprentice, should be the one leading them. Overwhelmed and stammering, Ashley struggles to respond as Bonita peeks in through the door. Bonita observes the confrontation from the doorway with a serious expression. Standing behind April, Bonita fumes that the artists are completely ignoring both Ashley and April's judgment. April thoughtfully concludes that, just as she feared, the artist won't trust Ashley because she was recommended by a suspicious person. With a determined look, April decides on her next course of action, surprising Bonita. April declares with conviction that she will go to the Grand Duke. The three artists stare in shock as they are informed that the director will be chosen through a competition. April smiles, realizing that the artists are having trouble accepting Ashley, whom she recommended. Lord Brown suggests that Ashley and another person should each draw a comic, letting the more talented one take the representative role. As April listens, Lord Brown raises a hand and asks who will evaluate the results to ensure fairness. He continues, arguing that a judgment based on personal taste would not be a fair result. April brightly suggests that the evaluation must be done by someone everyone can accept. She names her choice for the judge, Grand Duke Blair. The artists are stunned, while Barrymore smirks, seeing this as a direct chance to impress the Grand Duke and prove he is better than Ashley. Standing beside the Grand Duke, April asks the artists if they all agree to the terms. Barrymore enthusiastically accepts the challenge, while Ashley looks on with deep concern. Ashley remains silent, clutching a ribbon and looking down with a troubled expression. The Grand Duke muses that the princess's first ever request is for him to judge a competition between apprentice painters, as April flinches in surprise. In a chibi-style panel, he smugly asks if a simple thank you is all she has to say after he kindly agreed to help. April panics internally, desperately wondering what she should do for him in return. The Grand Duke's gaze softens as he quietly says, "Well," clasping her hands, April looks up at him with anxious anticipation. He tells her to keep this in mind, leaving her to ask what he means. He smiles, informing the stunned princess that since he willingly helped her, she now owes him a favor. The Grand Duke thinks to himself that the princess is very useful and that he will decide what to receive in return later. Her soul seems to fly from her body as she internally screams that he's terrifying. Later, Barrymore scoffs to another artist that the Grand Duke will obviously choose his work, calling Ashley's a monstrosity as she overhears. With a defeated look, Ashley approaches a door, holding her work. She turns, surprised, as someone calls her name. Accompanied by Benita, April cheerfully greets Ashley and asks why she looks so gloomy. Ashley confesses her doubts, worrying that the competition was a bad idea and that everyone will see her inadequacy in front of the Grand Duke. She continues, fearing she will end up embarrassing the young lady who trusted her. April reassures her that the Grand Duke's acknowledgement is more valuable than hers, which only surprises Ashley. April gently tells her to trust her, and Ashley looks down thoughtfully. April declares her genuine respect for Ashley's talent. Touched, Ashley thinks it's enough to be recognized, even briefly. Overwhelmed, Ashley collapses to the floor, hiding her face and insisting that she doesn't deserve such respect. April looks down at her with a gentle, knowing smile. She apologizes, thinking she might have pushed Ashley too hard. April remembers her past self, an insignificant person who loved nothing more than lying in her room. Smiling warmly, she thinks that, unlike her, Ashley hasn't given up on her dreams and continues to work hard. Crying, Ashley looks up as April tells her she absolutely deserves to be respected. April sits down on the floor to comfort the still crying Ashley. "Ashley, your efforts will surely shine." Sometime later, an attendant asks the Grand Duke to review the completed comics and choose a book band color. The Grand Duke sits and begins reading one of the submitted books. The Council of Elder Artists watches him with nervous anticipation. Barrymore and Ashley sit at a table, waiting anxiously for the verdict. The Grand Duke remains silent and unreadable as he continues to review the work. He closes the book with a snap and asks who drew it. A recruitment notice for the scanlation team is displayed. With a tap, he selects the book with the red band. Holding up the chosen book, he asks who wrote it. Barrymore and Ashley are frozen in shock and silence. An attendant presents the books to the council, asking for their opinions. Lord Brown declares that the book with the red band is better, believing it fits its purpose more, surprising April. The Grand Duke agrees, adding that while the blue-banded book had fancy illustrations, it lacked the driving force to keep him reading. He dismisses the blue-banded book as a desperate attempt to show off skill. He praises the red-banded book for its smart use of color and dynamic compositions. April smiles awkwardly, impressed by his sharp eye and detailed critique. Lord Brown adds that the red-banded book clearly considers the reader, as the artists wait nervously. He decisively chooses the book with the red band, leaving Barrymore enraged and Ashley stunned. The Grand Duke holds up the winning book and asks for the name of its creator. Ashley slowly rises from her seat, still in disbelief. The Grand Duke addresses her as Miss Barnes and asks if she has any sponsors. After she admits she has none, the Grand Duke declares that he will be her first sponsor. His announcement leaves both Ashley and April completely speechless with shock. Lord Brown murmurs his approval, stating that talent should always be given an opportunity. A thud sounds as the overwhelmed Ashley collapses to the floor. Kneeling and crying with gratitude, Ashley profusely thanks Duke Blair for his grace. April watches the heartwarming scene with a gentle, satisfied smile. Later, during a work session, a senior artist is surprised by Ashley's unexpected talent for organization. The council members discuss their surprise, admitting their initial worries about Ashley's reputation were mistaken. Sometime later, a beautifully bound book is presented. The project is complete. Ashley joyfully gives the finished book to April, who celebrates its completion. April thinks about how perfectly the artist's style matched her horror story idea and eagerly opens the book. She gasps in awe as a brilliant light emanates from the pages of the comic. April is blown away, praising the book's stunning art, smooth pacing, and masterful execution of the horror genre. Ashley and the artist watch on anxiously as she asks for April's verdict. April suggests a celebratory company dinner, an idea that confuses Ashley, before musing that she used to hate such events. Deciding against the dinner, April happily offers them an additional payment instead, declaring the piece truly outstanding. A tiny, overjoyed April decides she must immediately show the masterpiece to the Grand Duke. As she walks, she thinks there is one more thing she needs to do. Her heart pounds in her chest as she realizes why she is so nervous. The Grand Duke begins to read the comic she brought him. April panics, terrified of asking the handsome but intimidating man for something nerve-wracking. She tries to calm herself, recalling that he's been softening up lately. While the Grand Duke flips through the pages, April's anxiety builds. He notices her unease and asks if she has something to say, making her flinch. She tries to brush it off as a silly story, but he firmly insists that she speak. Gathering her courage, April brightly asks if he thinks the comic could actually make money. The Grand Duke looks at her with confusion, asking what she means. April declares it's a waste for such an incredible comic to be read only by her. She continues, lamenting the tragedy of such talented artists fading into obscurity. Looking at him, she sees him as a savior for talented people and realizes her plan might just work. Her eyes light up with a brilliant idea to sell the comic book across the entire Cleton Empire. Her audacious proposal leaves the Grand Duke looking completely bewildered. The scene shifts as a report is slammed on a desk, with someone shouting about a blunder. King Burga of the Salt Kingdom furiously scolds his officials for their incompetence. He reveals that the treasure of Salt vanished without a trace while being transported to Cleton. An official panics, realizing the lost shipment was skyrocketing wheat, and explains they only followed Princess Lamea's approved documents. The king explodes with rage, accusing the official of trying to disgrace his daughter, but the man pleads his innocence. Refusing to listen, the king orders the man who insulted royal blood to be taken away. As he's dragged off, the man cries out that it's unjust, while Princess Lamea watches with a cold smirk. Her expression hardening, Princess Lamea coolly orders everyone to leave the room. The king sternly commands that only Princess Lamea is to remain. The princess apologizes to her father, admitting she lost her judgment from overworking herself. A whimpering king listens as Princess Lamea blames her poor performance on being out of it. Lamea fumes internally, thinking this never happened when April was around, and wondering if she's more useless than an illegitimate girl. The king decides Lamea grew complacent with April's help and must now improve on her own, sternly warning her not to fail again. Forcing a bright smile, Lamea promises her father she will work and study even harder. The scene shifts as raindrops begin to fall on a field of green grass. Away from prying eyes, Princess Lamea trembles, collapsing onto the wet grass in distress. Clutching the grass, she despairs that no matter how hard she tries, she can never be like April, and questions why she must struggle so much. Picturing April, Lamea bitterly thinks that if her mother had been a lowly maid, perhaps she too would have been forced to try her best. She breaks down completely, sobbing that, as a noble princess, she shouldn't have to suffer such humiliation and pitying herself. An unfamiliar voice calls out, "Princess?" interrupting her emotional breakdown. Wiping her tears, Lamea quickly composes herself, thinking the jewel of Salt must not be seen in such a state as she wonders who is there. A man's silhouette appears before her against the bright sun, offering her a hand. CAT scans, which provide detailed images of organs, bones, and tissues, often involve exposure to radiation. However, the radiation dose from a single CAT scan is typically low, comparable to a few months of natural background radiation. The benefits of a medically necessary CAT scan usually outweigh the potential risks of this low dose. Lamea internally identifies the man as her fiancé, Mason Ravioli. She thinks about her fiancé, a wealthy and gentle man whose only fatal flaw is his unattractive appearance. Later, Lemia dismisses her fiancé's concern, claiming she is simply stressed from her administrative work. She coolly asks Count Ravioli why he came to see her, making him hesitate. He nervously suggests that since some time has passed since their informal engagement, they should discuss their marriage. Lemia coldly shuts him down, stating that with current diplomatic issues, it is too soon for her to marry. Mason respectfully accepts her wishes and tells her to rest well as she turns away from him. Lemia scoffs internally, disgusted at the very thought of marrying such an ugly man. She clenches her fists, vowing to become the wife of Raiden, the crown prince of Cleaton, who she believes loves her. The scene returns to April, who explains to the Grand Duke that a comic book can be understood even by the illiterate. She enthusiastically pitches the comic as an entertaining new trend that will also help improve the Empire's literacy rate. The Grand Duke listens in silence, his expression completely unreadable. He narrows his eyes, wondering to himself what on earth she could possibly be thinking. He sees her as a powerhouse using Princess Lemia as a puppet, questioning why she is now trying to start a business instead of escaping. Remembering the brilliant woman she used to be, the Grand Duke suspects there must be a hidden motive behind her strange actions. Deciding to play along to uncover her true purpose, he asks how she plans to distribute the comic. April internally celebrates that he's taking the bait and eagerly proposes publishing it in the Imperial newspaper. In a chibi-style explanation, she outlines her plan to eventually have the newspaper pay them, funding the artists with the profits. The Grand Duke skeptically asks if she truly believes she can generate significant profit from the newspaper alone. April brightly clarifies that the newspaper is only for the promotional effect, not for direct profit. With a flourish, she reveals her real plan, to later publish and sell the comic books themselves. The Grand Duke asks a single piercing question, how? Leaving April momentarily stunned and speechless. As April begins to explain using the Magic Tower's printing system, the Grand Duke cuts her off, revealing the tower is facing a major problem. Shocked by the news, April suddenly realizes she knows what the problem is from the novel. She remembers a key event from the Forced Empress. The Magic Tower's core is cracking. The novel's text explains that the mages abandoned their work to fix the leak, but their master refused Lemia's advice. She recalls the devastating outcome. The tower collapsed, crippling trade and causing a massive food shortage in Solt. Returning to the present, April asks the Grand Duke for permission to visit the Magic Tower. While he questions her request, April confirms to herself that she knows the solution the original Lemia had proposed. Confidently, she tells the Grand Duke she wishes to investigate the problem and find a solution. The Grand Duke grows suspicious, wondering if her first request to go outside is a cover to escape or meet someone. Deciding he'll discover her true motives by accompanying her, he simply says, "Very well." Overjoyed by his unexpected agreement, April beams and thanks him profusely. She is shocked that he agreed so easily, noting the absence of his usual terrifying threats. As she wonders if he's letting his guard down, the Grand Duke watches her with a puzzled expression. The Grand Duke cuts her thoughts short, asking if her requests are finished, and she quickly agrees. With a relieved and happy smile, April announces that she will be on her way. Stunned, April stares at a mountain of paperwork. She confronts the Duke, who looks shocked by her outburst. April scolds him for overworking, pointing out he's been sleeping in his office for a week. His exhausted face reminds her of how she looked before dying from overwork. The Duke wonders how she knew, resolving not to underestimate her. He asks what she's doing as she leans over his desk. She asks to see his hand, and he looks on with uncertainty. With a bright smile, she takes his hand. The Duke is utterly confused by her sudden action. She begins applying pressure to a point on his palm. She asks if his exhaustion is fading, and he reluctantly agrees it is. Blushing slightly, the Duke asks how she learned the technique. She explains an overworked person will try anything to stay awake, while he dismisses it as a folk remedy. She urges him to eat well, leaving him flustered. She sadly recalls being a fool who died in vain from neglecting her own health. Gently touching his hand, she hopes no one else dies so foolishly. Her gentle touch leaves the Duke blushing and flustered. He thinks he's being swayed by her words only because he's overworked. He reminds himself to stay vigilant, suspecting this is a ploy to uncover weaknesses. As he tries to dismiss her, a wave of dizziness hits him. He stumbles forward, losing his balance. A shocked April calls out to him. Thump. The Duke collapses, sending papers flying. As a teacup clatters, it's noted that exhaustion can cause dizziness. He falls into April's arms, who struggles to hold him up. April looks down with wide, worried eyes. Dazed, the Duke looks up at her, a blush on his face. He stares blankly for a moment, still dazed. April wonders what's happening as she holds him. She gently touches his forehead to check for a fever. She softly strokes his hair, and he looks on with a flushed expression. He pushes her hand away, insisting he's fine. He turns the concern back on her, saying she seems to be the one who's hurt. She laughs it off, patting her head and cheerfully declaring she's fine. Pointing at him, she notes that he's the one in question. Her sudden realization makes her gasp. The Duke offers her one wish to repay her help, which she questions. She briefly considers asking for snacks instead of something more serious. An idea strikes, and she declares there is one thing she absolutely needs. She stands before him with a document as he sits amidst scattered papers. She requests partanium, a rare, mana-resistant ore only ancient dwarves could forge. He asks why she needs it. She plans to borrow it for a trip to the magic tower. She smiles brightly, confident in her request. The Duke turns away, contemplating her words. Her hope is crushed when he flatly states he cannot lend it to her. He explains he can't give a weapon to a captive princess. Realizing he has a point, she tearfully agrees. She looks flustered but still hopeful. The Duke smiles slyly, revealing there is another way. A brilliant, multifaceted crystal glows with power. Beside a glowing crystal, April nervously denies his assumption. She feigns concern for his busy schedule, privately wondering why he came personally. The Duke looks down at her, a gentle expression on his face. Stunned, April looks up and asks what he just said. In disbelief, she asks him to repeat himself. Their destination is revealed, the ominous magic tower. Thump upon arriving, April is overcome with dizziness. The Duke assumes she has teleportation sickness, but she weakly denies it. She learns with horror that they will be sharing a room. He clarifies they will have separate beds, which offers her only slight relief. Blushing, she panics, realizing she's never shared a room with a man before. She struggles for words, unable to admit her awkwardness, as he silently waits. The Duke suspects her trip is a smokescreen for another purpose. Recalling her gentle touch, he believes it is all a deceptive ploy. He clenches his fist, resolving to remain vigilant and not waver. He believes her true intentions will soon be revealed at the tower. He plans to discover who the spy plans to meet. A magical message announces a guest has requested an audience. The Duke turns his attention to the glowing communication orb. The visitor is identified as Tonals, an envoy from Solt. Both the Duke and April are startled by the announcement. The Duke stares in shock, repeating the name in disbelief. He wonders if the envoy knows Princess April is with him. He furiously concludes her plan was to meet an ally and escape. His angry train of thought is suddenly cut short by confusion. He finds April hiding under a desk and demands to know what she's doing. From her hiding spot, she begs him to pretend she doesn't exist. Her bizarre behavior leaves the Duke utterly baffled. Tonals formally greets Grand Duke Blair with a smile. As Tomold offers flattery, April peeks out from behind the Duke's chair. April recognizes Tomold, recalling his contempt for her as an illegitimate child. Remembering how he overworked her, she trembles with suppressed rage. The Duke curtly orders Tomold to state his business. Tomold reveals his visit is about the Salt Kingdom's food shortage, shocking April. The envoy looks on with a worried expression. April thinks grimly that her worst fears have come true. She laments that despite her efforts, the tragic food shortage from the original story has begun. Tomold begs the Duke to help lift the grain export ban. The Duke coldly refuses, stating the matter does not concern him. With a piercing glare, he declares it is Solt's problem to solve. As he speaks, April suddenly rises from her hiding place behind his chair. Her wide, pleading eyes lock with his cold, dismissive ones. She looks up at him, her silent gaze begging him to reconsider. Her stare remains fixed on him, filled with desperate resolve. The Duke looks down, confused by her sudden intervention. Thump. She falls to her knees before him, desperately pleading for his help. Seeing her action, Tamald collapses to his knees in despair. With finality, the Duke looks down and says, "I refuse." Tamald brings up Princess Lumea's connection to the prince, but the Duke dismisses it as irrelevant. The Duke's expression hardens as he cuts off the discussion. With tear-filled eyes, April firmly grabs the Grand Duke's arm. In a chibi outburst, she tearfully blames him for her situation. A shocked Grand Duke listens as she accuses him of trying to test her with the wheat scheme. Surrounded by flowers, she makes a desperate plea for his help. Holding a bouquet, April looks up at him with pleading, hopeful eyes. The Grand Duke looks down at her in silence, appearing conflicted. He inwardly admits that this situation is troublesome for him. He recalls the envoy from Solt fainting and his own past desperation, where he clutched his falling pants and screamed for help, realizing this is a ridiculous situation to be in. Later in his office, the Grand Duke silently considers the situation while the envoy watches him. The envoy explains that starving people in the border regions will resort to theft, creating a problem for everyone. The Grand Duke decisively orders his knights to resolve the wheat fraud. Overjoyed, the envoy thanks him profusely and promises Princess Lumea will express her gratitude as well. With a relieved smile, the envoy announces his departure. A soft thud sounds as the Grand Duke looks down, lost in thought. April gasps as he suddenly grabs her. As he looms over her with a dark aura, she cries out in fear. Standing small and alone in his vast office, April trembles before the seated Grand Duke. She thinks she should appeal to his pity for the starving people of Solt, but stops herself, reasoning that it's not even her country. Looking up at him with newfound determination, she declares she will help him instead of Solt. She stands her ground, her expression resolved. With his arms crossed, the Grand Duke narrows his eyes and asks her to repeat what she said. April recalls how she didn't know who he was when she was kidnapped, but now she finally understands. She identifies him as Prince Raiden, the original story's male lead, a madman obsessed with Princess Lumea and power. She remembers that the ruthless Prince Raiden would kill or frame anyone who got in his way. April worries that this dangerous man will soon. The Grand Duke internally notes her knowledge is top secret, known only to the imperial family's inner circle. He stares at her, pondering the true extent of her intelligence. He steps toward her, thinking that the more he observes her. Leaning in close, he startles her with his sudden proximity. A nervous sweat breaks out on April's face as she wonders what's happening. He finds her actions incomprehensible and grows more curious about who she really is. April forces a nervous smile, realizing she's missed an opportunity to win over such a powerful figure. The Grand Duke smirks, admitting he thought he knew everything about Solt, and announces he's meeting the Tower Master tomorrow. He explains they can only speak briefly near the tower's core, and April's eyes widen in surprise. Overjoyed, April realizes she's gained access to the core and excitedly asks if they are going together. The Grand Duke smiles, saying he looks forward to it. He thinks to himself that her true purpose for visiting the tower and hiding the envoy will soon be revealed, and he will finally understand why she's staying with him while a gleeful April celebrates her perceived victory. Suddenly confused, she wonders aloud what there is to be so excited about. The next day, April and the Grand Duke arrive at the magnificent magic tower. They are greeted by the Tower Master, a long-haired elder holding a crystalline staff. The Tower Master looks weary and burdened. The Grand Duke introduces April, who is holding a large crystal, as a temporary guest. He explains they have a business proposal for the magic tower, piquing the Master's curiosity. April politely interjects, acknowledging the tower's internal issues and offering to show him instead. The Grand Duke asks to borrow the ornate box she brought. He opens it with a clatter, revealing a beautifully crafted hammer gleaming inside. The Tower Master gasps, recognizing the weapon is made from the rare metal partanium. April cheerfully states that the item is exactly what the magic tower needs right now, leaving the Tower Master confused. He thoughtfully strokes his chin, wondering what use the magic tower could possibly have for the rare ore. April smiles brightly, declaring, "I'll show you." She stands with the Duke and mages before the glowing tower core. Recalling the original story's failure, she swings a golden hammer. Crash! She shatters the glowing blue crystal with a single blow. The Tower Master screams in shock while the Duke looks on, startled. The massive magical core begins to crack and splinter. April smiles confidently, holding the hammer she used. The mages panic, with the Tower Master shouting that the core they worked so hard to restore is now broken. The Tower Master looks up in horror as a dark energy spreads. Mages demand to know what she's doing, fearing for the tower's safety. The Tower Master cries out in despair as the room is consumed by chaotic blue energy. The crystal shatters into countless pieces, releasing a brilliant light. The mages stand frozen, staring at the aftermath in stunned silence. The Duke observes that the violent vibrations have suddenly stopped. The Tower Master frantically demands to know what happened to the core. April stands smiling serenely beside the perfectly restored, glowing crystal. As the core floats peacefully, a voice wonders what has happened. The Tower Master stammers in disbelief that the core is restored and the magic flow has stabilized. He turns to look at a beaming April, seeking an explanation. She looks back with a bright, triumphant smile. Holding up the hammer, she declares the magic tower's problems are solved. The mages are utterly baffled that she resolved the crisis so simply. The Duke and Tower Master stare, prompting a nervous stammer from April. She claims she heard the core's voice, which confuses this sentient-looking crystal. Her claim shocks the mages, who shout in disbelief. The Tower Master excitedly declares her the legendary listener of Manhwa's voice and bestows upon her the title Ear of the Magic Tower. He clasps her hands tightly in gratitude and reverence. April gleefully realizes she now has access to enormously expensive magic for free. The Duke asks to reintroduce her with her new title, much to her delight. She panics and declares that this was all the Grand Duke's plan. She awkwardly tries to give her new title to the completely confused Grand Duke. The Tower Master bows to the Duke, pledging his service as the Ear of the Magic Tower. As April smirks, the Duke is left utterly speechless. He turns away, curtly accepting the situation, as she watches nervously. She cheerfully suggests splitting the privileges with him, but he remains silent. He asks if this was the real reason she borrowed the partanium weapon, and she nervously agrees. The Duke eyes her suspiciously, demanding to know how she stabilized the core. She insists she heard the core's voice, but he sternly tells her not to lie. Frightened, she quickly explains she learned the information while acting as Princess Lemea's proxy. She excitedly changes the subject, celebrating that mass production of comic books is now possible. Her cheerful declaration is met with the Duke's stony, unimpressed glare. His hand trembles slightly as he admits his deep curiosity about her. He wonders what she did in her past life, given her current capabilities. He gently takes a lock of her hair in his hand. He looks down at her, asking why she doesn't try to go back. She bluntly states she doesn't want to, shocking him with her answer. Her eyes well with tears as she confesses she was treated like a slave. She rages about being exploited by schemers like Tomard, surprising the Duke. The Duke listens intently as she says that, compared to her past, she is happy now. She beams with genuine happiness, her past sorrows momentarily forgotten. She nervously asks if she can stay, offering him magic tower privileges and comic profits. He remains silent, thoughtfully considering her proposal. He reflects that her new title gives her power, protecting her even from the imperial family. A memory flashes of him holding a different blonde woman in his arms. Smirking, He calls her plan ridiculous, but internally wonders if he wants to believe her. Turning away, he decides to speak with the Magic Tower Lord in more detail. April beams with excitement, happily referring to it as, quote, our comic book business. As a result, the scene shifts to a bustling city street. Their comic book business becomes a massive success, with posters showing it's sold out. The artists cry tears of joy as they read through stacks of fan letters. A blonde artist passionately declares she'll work herself to the bone for Volume 2. Her team excitedly discusses story ideas for the next volume and upgrading their magic tools. Overwhelmed by their success, a haggard April cries, realizing things went too well. Exhausted, she complains about the bright sunlight as a maid explains the Duke gave her a new, better room. The maid praises the new, brighter room, but April seems to have a reservation. She gratefully accepts a stack of documents from the maid. Her eyes widen as she is suddenly struck by an idea involving blackout curtains. That's it! She leaps up with a triumphant fist pump, startling the maid. Elsewhere, two men discuss the news that Grand Duke Blair received the title Ear of the Magic Tower for his crucial advice. A blonde man scoffs contemptuously at the news. He fumes over the Duke's failed missions and his recent interference with the Magic Tower. With a sinister smile, the blonde man decides it's time to teach the Duke a lesson. A small, smiling chibi character in a dark outfit thanks the audience for their support. A tiny, floating witch character encourages readers to support the creators. April approaches the Duke's desk, which is buried under massive stacks of paperwork. He sits wearily at his desk, resting his head on his hand. She looks at him with a wide, cheerful smile. He suspiciously asks what trouble she's planning this time, which she playfully denies. She recalls a scene from a novel where the Duke led an extermination squad against monsters. She reminds herself she's just remembering details she read in a book. She stands before the Duke, who is surrounded by a mountain of documents. She clenches her fist, presenting her new idea with a determined and bright expression. The overworked Duke sighs and tells her to go ahead, prompting her to ask if he's serious. He adjusts his glasses, explaining it's a win-win since the mansion is overflowing with pleta leather. Delighted, she thanks him and turns to leave. From his desk, he asks what she's planning to make with the materials. Wink. She turns back, playfully telling him it's a secret. She puts a finger to her lips, smiling mysteriously. Yahoo! She joyfully throws herself onto her luxurious new bed. She hugs her pillow, reveling in the comfort of a proper bed after so long. Lying in bed, she clutches a folder and wonders if she should have told him her plan. She finds his disappointed expression touching and considers letting him in on the secret. No. She sits up abruptly, deciding that telling the recipients would spoil the surprise. Recently, the entire mansion staff has been suffering from severe sleep deprivation. Because the Duke had to counter the Crown Prince, he left the mansion unattended. Aquil writes as the narration explains that his duties were naturally pushed back. With his return, the entire mansion is now in a sleep-deprived, workaholic state. Her plan is revealed. Perfect, hand-stitched blackout curtains to block the sun. She worries that with his workload, the Duke won't get any sleep tonight either. As he runs a hand through his hair, she thinks he looks unusually alluring. Flustered in bed, she insists he isn't thinking about work. Huddled in her blankets, she declares the blackout curtains are hers. Tucked in bed, she plans to give gifts to Benita, Liam, and the Duke. Resolved, a voice decides it's finally time to sleep. The next day, a dressed-up April gasps in shock at an unseen sight. A man with glasses calmly identifies their location as a storage room to April's annoyance. They have arrived at a shabby, dilapidated storage shed. The shed's doorway is blocked by a massive, dark pile. Horrified by the terrifying mess, she's told the Duke had all the pleta leather in the duchy collected for her. The man with glasses smiles, confirming the order. The three of them stand before the massive pile of leather. Her face contorts with rage as she thinks of the Duke. While the Duke hopes she suffers, April fumes, feeling cursed by him. Inside, they are dwarfed by the enormous amount of raw leather. April smirks, privately pleased that the quantity is more than she expected. She wonders just how many exterminations the Duke conducted to get this much. Amazed, she realizes the Duke is single-handedly doing the Empire's work. Suddenly, she recoils, covering her nose from a horrible smell. The man explains that the odor comes from the uncleaned leathers. As April hides from the smell, she claims a delicate stomach, which surprises him. April urgently calls out to her red-haired maid Bonita. She asks Bonita if she knows how to process the leather into fabric. Bonita beams, happily announcing that she knows a leatherworking expert. She explains the expert is Mrs. Rainey, the finest tailor in the Duke's mansion. They both admire a vision of the skilled and elegant Mrs. Rainey. April immediately asks if she can meet Mrs. Rainey right away. The scene transitions to the grand reception room of the Duke's mansion. April greets a stern, intimidating woman who introduces herself as Mrs. Rainey. The atmosphere in the room immediately darkens. A pale and intimidated April looks toward a cheerful, oblivious Bonita. Mrs. Rainey clenches a fist, surprised by such a talented person. She then fumes, angry that she wasn't told the full story. Want to be part of a team that provides their readers with their favorite manga as soon as possible, and with the best quality possible. Then join our team. We are recruiting all positions. Join our Discord server to apply. April nervously steels herself, vowing not to be intimidated. She passionately asks Mrs. Rainey to treat the paletta leather. April offers a bouquet, waiting anxiously as the tailor considers her offer. Mrs. Rainey turns and holds up a hand, firmly refusing the job. A tiny, shocked April asks why she would refuse. Mrs. Rainey explains there is no demand for paletta leather in such hot weather. She concludes that undertaking the project right now is simply too risky. As Mrs. Rainey bows in apology, April forces a smile and says it's all right. Internally, however, she is screaming with frustration. Remembering her dream of a room with perfect blackout curtains, she resolves not to give up. Sitting by the fire, she desperately tries to think of another way. Mrs. Rainey suddenly asks what exactly she plans to make with the leather. April's simple answer, curtains, leaves the tailor completely baffled. Musing, Mrs. Rainey realizes the sunlight-impervious leather would be perfect for that purpose. Seizing her chance, April excitedly pitches her idea for perfect blackout curtains. She begins to get emotional, preparing to tell a moving story. A narrator's note encourages her to tell her story with emotion. Mrs. Rainey realizes the curtains could provide comfortable sleep. She recalls how exhausted everyone in the mansion looked. A thud sounds as she stands, prioritizing business over a sad story. As she turns to leave, she suddenly stops. April interrupts, cheerfully offering a very generous rate. She then adds that she'll pay double for any overtime. With a sweet smile, she threatens to find someone else. The elegant brooch on her dress glimmers with confidence. Bonita gasps, shocked by the incredible offer. Bonita's eyes gleam, imagining double pay for overtime. Squee! She declares it's the best offer she's ever heard. April laughs, claiming such pay is standard where she's from. Bonita stares in wide-eyed disbelief at her lady's claim. A voice admits the offer is truly difficult to refuse. While Mrs. Rainey eagerly accepts the proposal, promising her best work. She quickly stops their celebration, adding a condition. Mrs. Rainey requests more skilled workers, and April enthusiastically agrees to hire them. Bonita points upward, ready to tackle the grand new project. Bonita bluntly asks how a penniless captive will pay for everything. Trying to hide a smirk, April tells her maid not to worry. With a sinister grin, she reveals that she has a plan. The man with glasses tells his visitor to come in. April cheerfully peeks her head through the doorway. She's overwhelmed by a mountain of paperwork worse than the Grand Duke's. He states he cannot stop working as he must report to the Duke. He apologizes for his rudeness, and she nervously agrees he seems busy. She stops, shocked when he claims he isn't busy at all. He lists his many tasks, including staying up all night collecting her leather. With a terrifying grin, he passive-aggressively insists he wasn't busy. She realizes he just wants her to state her business and leave. She gets straight to the point, demanding her money. The tense atmosphere builds with a dramatic shift. Pushing up his glasses, he calmly asks, "What money?" She clarifies it's her comic book profits, and he identifies them as royalties. As she holds a toy gun to his head, he calmly agrees the money is hers. He grows suspicious, asking what she suddenly needs it for. He offers her the ducal family's seal and key for the merchant guild. He explains that he's too buried in work to leave his desk himself. Trapped by his duties, he smiles, pleased with this outcome. April forces a strained laugh, understanding his scheme. A carriage makes its way down a quiet town street. Yay, Benita cheers, absolutely thrilled about their first outing together. April beams, repeating that it's their first time out. Benita spots something exciting, and April asks if it's the Merchant Guild. Whoa! Benita excitedly pulls her through the bustling crowd. Benita holds up a beautiful necklace, saying it would look perfect on her. Blushing, April begins to reconsider her feelings about the outing. The thought occurs that going out might not be so bad after all. She quietly finds herself drawn to the sparkling jewelry at a stall. As April and Benita talk, a man's dark silhouette lurks in the background. A sinister, shadowy figure with glowing eyes appears. A cheerful chibi witch offers a friendly greeting. The man with glasses confirms to the Grand Duke that the princess requested her royalties. The concerned Grand Duke wonders why she suddenly needs money, but his aide has no answers. Adjusting his monocle, the aide clarifies that he only knows her request is urgent. The Grand Duke clasps his hands, troubled by the word urgent. The scene shifts to a bustling town, focusing on a sign for a place called Pascal. A large crowd gathers outside the building. April observes the crowd, noting that Pascal's group seems busy with more than just finance. She mentions she likely won't return to the mansion until night. Benita asks why she's waiting, and a confused April answers that she's in line. Benita laughs, yanking a surprised April out of the line and saying it's the wrong one. An imposing, stern-looking man with blonde hair appears before them. The man confronts them angrily, startling both April and Benita. He apologizes for the state of things as Benita excitedly holds up the ducal seal and key, leaving April flustered. He offers to guide them inside the building. He leads them down a long flight of stone stairs into the depths of the building. April nervously wonders how far down they are going. They arrive at a heavily fortified door flanked by 2 guards. Creak. The massive doors slowly swing open. Their guide leads April through the grand doorway. He stops before a massive golden vault, announcing their arrival. The heavy vault door opens, revealing a treasury overflowing with gold. Wah! April is left utterly breathless by the incredible sight. Staring at the mountains of gold, she admits she never expected this much. She gleefully hugs a stack of coins, ready to collect her earnings. Back on the street, April looks on in awe as Benita carries a giant sack of gold. April offers to help Benita with the heavy-looking bag. Benita proudly reintroduces herself with a confident smile. She reveals she already cast a lightweight spell on the bag, earning April's praise. April gives Benita an appreciative smile for her cleverness. She reflects on how the Duke, unlike her captors in her past life, doesn't treat her like a slave. Thinking of him, she lists all the kindnesses he's shown her, like letting her earn money. Wow. She erupts in a panic, wondering if she has Stockholm Syndrome for feeling gratitude toward her kidnapper. Composing herself, she considers buying him a small gift. A sudden shout of "Pickpocket!" startles her. Bonita desperately calls out her name as she falls. Bracing for the fall, April hopes she doesn't die as a panicked Benita watches. A man with long, grayish-purple hair catches her, assuring her that she's not hurt. Her mind flashes to the Grand Duke, who smirks down at her. In shock, April yells out, "Duke!" The long-haired man looks confused, and April realizes it isn't the Duke after all. She quickly apologizes for the mistake, reasoning that the Duke would be too busy to be here. Bonita rushes to her side, frantically asking if she's all right. Bonita tearfully apologizes, But April reassures her that it's okay. She blames her own carelessness, admitting she wasn't used to watching for pickpockets. She turns to thank the man who saved her. But when they look, her mysterious rescuer has already vanished. A red-haired woman frets over not knowing her rescuer's name as April worries about their lost money. April decides they should go to the security office, while her red-haired companion apologizes profusely. April thinks grimly that if the money is gone, so is her blackout curtain project. A voice suddenly calls out, stopping the two women in their tracks. A man with long, silver hair appears, holding a money pouch and asking if it's theirs. He returns the bag, explaining that the thief didn't get far. He mentions the thief was caught as a beaten young man is shown collapsed on the ground. The red-haired woman beams with joy, clutching the recovered bag of gold. As April bows her head in thanks, the man insists that helping someone is only natural. Just as he turns to leave, April excitedly calls for him to wait. The silver-haired man wonders with a grimace if she has figured out his identity. The Duke worries she has recognized him through his disguise. She beams brightly and asks him to be her bodyguard. She points to herself with a wide, expectant smile. The silver-haired man is utterly stunned by her bizarre request. He thinks to himself in confusion, bodyguard, as birds fly across a sunset sky. A recruitment notice featuring a pink-haired girl is displayed. He nervously wonders if his true identity has been discovered. The Duke panics internally, thinking she must have figured it out. April smiles hopefully, asking again for him to be her bodyguard. Flustered, he asks why she would hire him when they've only just met. She explains he looks like a mercenary seeking work and holds up a flyer she assumes he dropped. The silver-haired man stands stiffly, completely speechless. He leans in and whispers that he is a distant relative of Duke Blair, shocking her. April gasps in surprise, her hands flying to her mouth. Seeing her reaction, the man smiles faintly and agrees to her request. The scene shifts to a majestic ducal mansion under a starry night sky. In his office, the Duke's aide asks how he is, to which he replies that much has happened. The aide reports that Princess April asked to hire an escort knight after her outing. The Duke lets out a weary sigh, rubbing his temple as his aide looks on with concern. "The escort knight is me," the Duke confesses, leaving his aide utterly dumbfounded. The aide stares back, his mouth agape in pure disbelief. He scolds the Duke for being careless even while wearing the ring of altered appearance. The Duke explains he had no choice after the princess was pickpocketed. The aide marvels at the ring's power, since she didn't recognize him and tried to hire him. He explains it's a Blair family heirloom meant to protect its head from enemies. The aide suggests making up an excuse to decline her request for a knight. "No, approve it," the Duke orders, surprising his aide who asks if he'll really do it. Clasping his hands, the Duke declares that this is all for the better. He explains this will let him uncover her schemes, then orders an increase in duchy guards. He grimaces, stating that a pickpocketing in daylight proves the security is abysmal. The aide teases him, suggesting the princess's well-being is what's truly on his mind. The Duke flusteredly insists he's only concerned for the citizens, but his aide isn't convinced. Requesting time alone to think, the Duke dismisses his aide for the night. The aide departs, leaving the Duke standing alone on a balcony overlooking the grounds. He gazes out at the night sky, lost in thought. A sudden voice behind him asks what he's doing alone, startling him. He turns to find a joyfully laughing April, standing there. He asks why she is out here, returning her earlier question. He questions her presence outside, remarking on her reputation for hating to leave her room. The Duke looks up, surprised, asking if she came to see him. April playfully explains she saw him looking pitiful and decided to bother him. He asks her business, and she says she heard from Liam and wants to thank him. A flashback shows the Duke kindly giving something to a small child in town. He dismisses her thanks, calling it a promise he intended to keep, but she is grateful. April beams with a genuinely happy and appreciative smile. He asks why she keeps requesting his hand, and she playfully tells him to close his eyes. Chuckling, he remarks on the strange things she makes him do as he takes her hand. He closes his eyes, waiting for her surprise. She places a small, ornate wooden box into his open palm. He opens his eyes and calls the gift a bribe, shocking a flustered April. He correctly guesses it's a bribe for an escort night, and she realizes Liam told him. She passionately vouches for the man, but the Duke warns she trusts him too easily. Confused, April listens as he says she doesn't know who her rescuer really is. He chides her for being too trusting and careless despite her intelligence. A jolt runs through April as she asks how he knew she was pickpocketed. With a subtle smile, he claims he heard about the incident from Liam. He deems her clumsy and agrees she needs an escort, much to her annoyance. After granting permission, he shoos her away to wallow in his misery. Walking away, she suddenly stops, puzzled. She realizes she never told Liam she was pickpocketed. Panicked, she scurries away, hoping Bonita was the one who told him. The Duke peeks out from a doorway, watching her leave. He opens the gift box, revealing a brilliant green jeweled brooch. Looking at the brooch, a gentle smile graces his face. The scene shifts as the Grand Duke angrily demands to know who touched his chambers. A maid stands silently before the furious Duke. He glares intensely, ordering her to bring the person to him right now. A chibi witch waves hello, offering a friendly message. An older woman with her hair in a bun smiles warmly. The Duke, looking utterly exhausted, rubs his eyes and skips lunch, having not slept for days. He rises from his desk and prepares to leave the room. He walks purposefully down a long, sunlit corridor. He stops, his hand on a door as he steels himself. His eyes burn with a fierce, dark intensity. The maid from before stands before him, ready for his command. The maid explains Lady April prepared a gift to help him sleep. She bows deeply, apologizing for acting on her own. The Duke stands over her, his expression unreadable. His eyes flash as he reverses his earlier anger, wanting to see the result right now. In a sun-drenched cottage, someone exclaims, "My goodness!" Wah! Inside the perfectly dark room, Bonita marvels that it feels like night. Mrs. Rainey holds up the material, noting the charm of its unique patterns. April humbly gives Mrs. Rainey the credit. Mrs. Rainey smiles, insisting it was all April's direction. April gives a cheerful thumbs up, glad she could help those in need first. Her thoughts turn to the silent Grand Duke, wondering if he's still too busy to comment. Mrs. Rainey enthusiastically proposes starting a business with the new curtains. The idea of a business leaves April completely flabbergasted. Mrs. Rainey smiles shrewdly, confident that many others would want their product. Mrs. Rainey explains the clear demand for their product. April reluctantly considers the new business venture. Motivated by gold, April eagerly accepts the offer. She casually justifies her decision, feigning nonchalance. She sees a chance to earn her freedom for life. She resolves to do 50 years of work at once. Gasping for breath, the head maid rushes in. April wonders why the head maid is so frantic. She questions the fuss over a simple lunch invitation. Bonita insists she wear a fancy dress, horrifying April. Bonita explains the burdensome custom of formal attire. Dressed up, she looks apprehensive and uncomfortable. Bonita beams, absolutely delighted with the result. Despite everything, she feels a sense of unease. The scene shifts to an opulent, formal setting. She makes her entrance in a beautiful gown. The Duke commands her to sit at the lavish table. Seated, she's stunned by the extravagant feast. She wonders about the serious atmosphere as the Duke eats. His serious demeanor makes her feel inexplicably nervous. She forces a bright smile, trying to break the tension. He offers the meal as repayment for her gift. Relieved, she misreads his anger over her intrusion. He sternly forbids her from touching his things again. He coldly states that was his only reason for the meal. Hurt, she asks what part of the gift he disliked. He coldly replies that he found all of it unpleasant. He walks away, wishing it would never happen again. Clenching her fist, she admits she was wrong. Her regret turns into defiant anger. He continues to walk away, leaving her behind. She questions why she should be grateful to a stranger. He dismisses her, saying he'll take his leave. She desperately calls for him to wait. She follows him down the grand corridor. She begs him to explain what she did wrong. Tech. He suddenly stops and grabs her wrist. He reveals he can only sleep in pitch-black rooms. He reveals his mother used to hit him for sleeping. A painful flashback reveals his mother's abusive demands. Pained, he asks if she now understands his trauma. He releases her, telling her to return to her room. He angrily warns her to stop meddling in his affairs. He turns and leaves her standing alone and dejected. Heartbroken, tears stream down her face. A quiet focus on the detail of her dress. A promotional banner is displayed. Another promotional banner appears. A hand pulls back a curtain, letting in the light. He reflects that his lack of sleep made him overreact. The Duke looks pained and weary. He requests to be left alone. He suddenly remembers he's the princess's escort. He worries about how he will face her now. Overwhelmed, he's filled with immense regret. In her room, April screams in frustration. She realizes she has no one to confide in. Her escort knight, Ian, appears before her. She nervously confirms their employer-employee relationship. She happily declares him the only one on her side. He cautiously asks what she needs from him. She admits she angered someone by mistake. Her confession leaves Ian surprised. She prepares to explain what happened. After her story, she waits for his reaction. She looks up at him with hopeful anticipation. Taking his hand, she begs for his advice. Swoosh! Flustered, Ian admits he has no ideas. She thinks about stars and the moon. A brilliant idea suddenly strikes her. She thanks him, crediting him for her inspiration. He looks down, flustered by her touch. She asks him to work overtime today. She offers a generous triple pay rate. The scene shifts to a sun-dappled forest. Ian draws his sword, ready for action. Prepared for their quest, she silently thanks Ian. She studies a map, searching for their destination. Ian questions why they're in the mountains. She cryptically explains the cure is there. She asks if he has heard of glow fireflies. He perfectly describes the rare glowing insect. He wonders what she plans to do with them. She reveals her plan to paint glowing stars on the curtain. She proudly names her creation Glow Stars. They venture deeper into the woods together. She recalls a memory from Lamea that proves helpful. Ian believes her plan will surely help the Duke. He smiles, impressed by her thoughtful idea. As night falls, Ian suggests they return. He points out how late it has gotten. She insists on searching just a little longer. He urges her to stop, promising to help tomorrow. Confused by the map, a sudden sound startles her. Ah! She slips and falls from a ledge as Ian panics. The world blurs as she plummets down. He catches her just in time, holding her tight. Ugh! He frantically asks if she's hurt. He tells her it's too dangerous to continue. Stunned, she quietly says his name. Beaming with joy, April exclaims that they finally found it. A decorative seal confirms their success. Found it. Ian looks at her, utterly bewildered by her excitement. In a magical clearing, she triumphantly announces they found the glow fireflies. A promotional banner is displayed. Another promotional banner appears. The Duke stands in his chambers, looking surprised. He stares at the glowing green stars on his new curtains, wondering what they are. April stands beside him, smiling proudly with her eyes closed. She explains the glowing stars are an apology gift designed to brighten the room when the curtains are closed. As she offers to take them back, he quickly accepts, acknowledging her effort. Overjoyed, she looks up at him and asks if he really means it. With a hopeful curtsy, she wishes he'll truly like the gift. As she opens the door to leave, the Duke watches from behind her. He calls out to her, and she turns back, surprised. Flustered and blushing, he struggles to say thank you. Confused by his stammering, she waits for him to speak. He abruptly changes the subject, awkwardly asking if she likes meat. She cheerfully replies that she prefers meat over seafood. Relieved, he promises to have meat prepared for dinner tonight. She is touched by his considerate, if clumsy, gesture. Her face breaks into a radiant, happy laugh. The scene shifts to his darkened room, filled with the soft glow of the star curtains. For the first time in a long time, the Duke sleeps peacefully. Back in the forest, the fireflies glitter in the night. Lying on the grass, April and Ian reflect on how hard it is to give a simple gift. She turns to him with a heartfelt smile, thanking him for all his help. He demurs, insisting she did all the hard work, but she knows she couldn't have done it alone. Ian turns to her, asking if he can ask her a question. When she agrees, he asks why she goes to such lengths for the Duke. A memory surfaces of a younger, sadder April looking up at the stoic Duke. She confesses that she initially felt pity for him, seeing a reflection of her past self. Continuing her explanation, she says she also wanted to repay his help. She reveals that despite his cold exterior, he never refuses her requests. With a tender expression, she says he's warmer than anyone on the inside. She concludes that being with him has taught her to look forward to tomorrow again. As she mentions returning to where she came from, Ian's expression grows serious. He clutches his chest, confused by the strange feeling her words give him. Meanwhile, the Duke reflects that the glowing stars calm his heart. He sits up in bed, looking serene and well-rested. Later, at a lavishly set dinner table, April feels needlessly nervous. The Duke arrives, looking refreshed, and asks if she's been waiting. She's stunned by his handsome appearance, assuring him she just got there. Trying to act casual, she compliments him and asks if he slept well. He turns away, hiding a blush, but she has already noticed. He admits it's been a long time since he slept so soundly. His confession fills her with pure, unadulterated joy. The Duke strides confidently toward the dinner table, ready for their meal. He graciously pulls out a chair for her. April responds with a joyous, carefree laugh. A delicious-looking feast is served for dinner. He notes how much she's enjoying the food, and she happily agrees it's delicious. Feeling at ease, she thinks the food tastes even better today. The Duke watches her, wanting to finish what he started saying earlier. Their dinner is suddenly interrupted by a man bursting in, calling for His Highness. The man kneels, apologizing for his discourtesy and explaining he has an urgent message. The Duke calmly asks him to deliver the message. His aide reports that the message is from the Imperial Palace. The aide delivers the shocking news. Crown Prince Leiden is on his way. The imperial crest of a golden dragon is displayed. A handsome blonde-haired man in a formal white uniform appears. A promotional banner is displayed. Another promotional banner appears. The aide repeats that the news has just arrived from the palace. The Duke is stunned to hear that Crown Prince Leiden is coming. He suspects the prince is up to something, arriving without any notice. Leon clarifies that the prince will arrive in less than 2 hours. Looking concerned, the Duke rises from the table. He apologizes to the princess, asking to reschedule their dinner. She laughs brightly, understanding the situation completely. As he leaves, the Duke summons Liam to his side. With a grim expression, he orders that Princess April must not be seen by Leiden. Later, a nervous Benita asks April how the Duke liked her gift. April gives a thumbs up, saying he slept soundly, and Benita celebrates her success. Benita's expression shifts as she prepares to share some news. She tells April about the Crown Prince's visit, but April already knows. As Benita wonders about the sudden visit, April calmly says she knows. Privately, April worries, hoping the reason for his visit isn't sickness. A sudden blush and excited expression from April startles Benita. Noticing April's dazed look, Benita asks why she's suddenly so pale. Feigning illness, April claims she feels a slight fever coming on. The concerned maid accepts her explanation and thanks her. April clutches her chest, complaining of a sudden tightness. She wonders if her discomfort is from eating too quickly. Deciding she needs fresh air, she looks toward the estate grounds at night. In a grand hall, another maid spots Benita and calls out to her. The maid explains she was looking for her, surprising Benita. She reveals that Sir Liam sent for Benita, who wonders why. The other maid simply tells her to go ask him herself. Bonita reads a new order with shock. She must keep the princess in her room. At his desk, Liam writes as Bonita asks for the reason behind the order. He sets down his quill, stating his goal is to prevent an encounter with the prince. Liam gives her a chilling warning. Never mention any other young ladies in the mansion, or he can't guarantee her life. The crown prince arrives by carriage, greeted by the duke and his staff. The staff formally greets His Highness, the crown prince. The prince casually greets the duke by his name, Kyan. Leaning in close, the prince smirks, saying the duke must be curious about his visit. He menacingly lists the duke's recent activities, from magic to other useless projects. The duke sarcastically welcomes his guest. The prince declares he will stay overnight. The prince orders to be shown the way. Annoyed, the duke grits his teeth. Bonita arrives with medicine, apologizing for her delay. She stops, her face frozen in shock. She finds the room empty, calling for Lady April. The duke mockingly offers his humble accommodations. He passive-aggressively scolds the unannounced prince. The prince dismisses his complaint, demanding answers. The duke demands to know the reason for his visit. The prince reveals his visit concerns a popular comic book. He casually continues his explanation. He describes the queen's obsession with the comic. He reveals the queen demands to meet the creator. He explains the creators were sworn to secrecy. His aide confesses they used force to find the comic's origin. The prince mocks the duke's lack of creativity. He smirks, suspecting someone else is behind it. He declares his true purpose, finding the producer. He notes the duke's uncharacteristic recent actions. The prince believes meeting this person will explain everything. The duke is skeptical. The prince smiles with absolute certainty. He takes the duke's worried expression as confirmation. Feigning stiffness, the prince decides to take a walk. He orders his aides to wait, wanting privacy. The duke and Liam watch him depart, concerned. The duke asks for the princess's location. Liam assures him strict orders have been given. Panicked, Bonita rushes in, surprising Liam. She falls to her knees before the duke. Crying, she confesses a grave sin. The duke looks on in horrified realization. A promotional banner is displayed. Another promotional banner is displayed. Distraught, she kneels before His Highness. He learns the shocking news. The young lady is missing. April stands alone on a moonlit balcony. Her fever worsening, she decides to rest inside. The prince appears just as she turns to leave. Surprised, she turns and asks, "Who is there?" The prince formally demands her name and rank. She analyzes the unfamiliar man's formal bearing. She has a shocking realization. Crown Prince Raiden. The crown prince stands before her, imposing and regal. With a nervous curtsy, she formally greets him. Dizzied by her fever, her vision blurs. Overcome, she loses consciousness and falls backward. Unconscious, she lies still, burning with fever. A maid watches anxiously from a staircase as a man stands in the distance. An order is given to search thoroughly and leave no corner unchecked. A young maid nervously acknowledges the command from her superior. A gloved hand clenches as a man roars in frustration, questioning how they can't find one person in the mansion. The aide suggests the princess may have gone outside, but the duke dismisses it, sighing that a knight would have seen her. As the ducal mansion is shown at night, the duke is certain that not a single knight has reported seeing her. With a confident glint in his eye, the duke concludes she is definitely still inside the mansion. He clenches his fist, determined to find her before the others do, especially before a man named Raiden finds her. The scene lingers on the mansion's impressive exterior under the night sky. After the aide reports she's not in the library, the duke orders him to check the terrace next. A sudden voice interrupts their search, asking why they are so frantic at this late hour. The duke turns, startled, to find a blond man in an ornate white outfit observing him. The blond man provocatively asks if the duke is perhaps looking for a woman. A smug, knowing smile spreads across the blond man's face. The two men stand in a tense confrontation in the brightly lit hall. Enraged, the duke grabs the blond man, demanding to know where she is. The blonde man raises his hands placatingly, telling the furious Duke to calm down. He notes the Duke's murderous expression, prompting the Duke to repeat his demand for her location. The blonde man throws his head back and lets out a loud, mocking laugh. Placing a hand on the Duke's shoulder, he remarks that it's been a while since he's seen that beast-like expression. He then calmly reveals that the woman the Duke is looking for is in his room right now. The Duke grips his arm, warning him that he won't stay quiet if a single finger was laid on her. Shoving the man aside, the Duke turns and storms down the hall. The blonde man watches him go with a sinister smile, thinking the Duke's obvious affection has made him far too interested. The Duke rushes through the corridor. He bursts into a bedroom to find a young woman with light pink hair sleeping peacefully. The sleeping woman breathes softly, her face slightly flushed. As the blonde man enters, he reiterates that she's fine, while the Duke thinks grimly about what was done to her. The Duke, Kaeon, erupts in fury, demanding to know what happened, but the blonde man reveals he is the Crown Prince and questions his tone. The Crown Prince coldly asks if Kaeon is daring to yell at him. With a menacing glare, the Crown Prince wonders if Kaeon has truly lost all his fear. The red-haired maid and the Duke's aide rush in, calling out in alarm to his grace. The aide quickly intervenes, placing a hand on the Duke's shoulder to de-escalate the situation. He apologizes profusely to the Crown Prince, begging for forgiveness for his master's rudeness. When the Crown Prince asks how she got here, the Duke claims she fainted and he moved her to his room. The Duke looks down with a pained expression, thinking that it's all his fault. He blames himself, believing the princess fainted from overexerting herself while making curtains for him. The aide offers to call knights to move her, but the Duke refuses the help. "I'll take her myself," he declares, gently lifting the sleeping princess into his arms. The Duke apologizes for his disrespect, stating he will gladly accept whatever punishment the Crown Prince deems fit. The Crown Prince looks on, surprised, before stating he will forgive him with his vast generosity. Holding the princess, the Duke announces his departure. He carries the princess out of the room as the Crown Prince and the maid watch him leave. The Crown Prince observes Kaeon's uncharacteristic behavior, realizing their relationship isn't just a simple acquaintance. He narrows his eyes, wondering if the young woman is Kaeon's secret lover. As the Duke leaves, the Crown Prince smirks, finding the situation equally intriguing. He muses that there is something strangely familiar about the girl. Back in her own room, the Duke gently lays the princess down in her bed. The red-haired maid, Bonita, sobs in the background as the aide warns her that her punishment will come when the princess awakens. The Duke places a cool cloth on the princess's forehead, saying there's no need to blame poor Bonita. The Duke accepts full blame and dismisses everyone to rest. Liam sighs, thinking this will ease his guilt and agreeing to help. Bowing, Liam departs, leaving the Duke beside the unconscious April. The doors click shut, sealing the room in silence. The Duke lies down beside her, his gaze fixed on her sleeping face. He blushes softly, a tender expression in his eyes. A promotional banner is displayed,